Our paper is entitled Co-Designing with Older Adults, Examining and Reflecting on Collaboration with Aging Communities. Participatory design approaches and co-design methods have involved older adults in the design process to make sure that technologies meet the needs of older adults. These methods have also been used to challenge assumptions about older adults' abilities to contribute creative ideas to design. Prior research has provided ways to facilitate successful collaborations with older adults. However, understanding interactions remains an area of need to facilitate equal and equitable collaboration during design activities. Our study aimed to address that gap by understanding the interactions between older adults and younger adult student designers in a series of co-design activities. Our research questions were: what types of interactions occur during co-design with older adults and student designers? What types of activities lead toward balanced or unbalanced interactions? How might co-design sessions impact student designers' perceptions of designing with older adults? To understand the factors that contribute to equal collaborations between older adults and student designers, we conducted 12 co-design sessions with 16 older adults and 11 student designers. Our student designers participated in co-design sessions as well as weekly meetings where they engaged in reflection activities. We examined the team's interactions by adapting a framework initially aimed to understand the child-adult design partnership. This framework was developed through cooperative inquiry, an approach that has addressed power dynamics in intergenerational design through building a partnership. The framework has 4 dimensions that describe design partnerships: facilitation, relationship building, design by doing, and elaboration. Each dimension can be described as towards balanced or towards unbalanced interactions. This is a list of our co-design sessions. There were 6 in total, 1 for each week. Each session was 90 minutes long. The structure of the sessions followed the human-centered design approach, and the goal for each team was to create a low-tech prototype of a health and well-being technology. These are the reflection activities that the student designers engaged in. The activities had students either reflect on a specific session or reflect across several sessions to gain broader learnings. Our findings demonstrate that developing a design partnership is complex. The framework helped surface factors like sharing life experiences and role ownership that influence balanced or unbalanced interactions. We found that we were able to adapt Yip et al.'s framework to teams of older adults and student designers to describe their interactions during design activities. We learned that the facilitation dimension was too broad. We found that there was a difference between facilitating the activity and facilitating the discussion. I will walk us through one example. We saw the strongest impact on relationship building during the timeline activity, when team members shared events in their lives that influenced their perceptions of health and well-being. This dimension, which is facilitating the activity, examines how the activity or task is carried out. There were several instances when student designers shared this role, leading toward a balanced interaction. This example happened in session 1 when the older adults started grouping when sharing their perceptions. This team has 4 members: 2 student designers, Jake and Lily, and 2 older adults, Michelle and Lena. When Jake shared his sticky notes about mental health and security, Michelle, the older adult, surveyed the table and suggested a grouping for the sticky note security. Lily said, "Well, later in the session, we're going to put all the sticky notes on the wall." However, Michelle surveyed the table and suggested to Jake, "I think your mental health sticky goes with this humor and balance, fun, and stuff." Then Lena chimed in with a similar sticky, saying, "I got balanced," and passed it to Michelle. Jake said, "I think we're doing grouping afterwards, right?" Lily confirmed. However, Lena and Michelle continued to group, and so Lily and Jake went with it. The sharing and grouping continued. Michelle and Lena handed Lily a succession of similar stickies. Lily accepted them and said, "Oh wow, these are great." Michelle then said, "We are doing our group thing over here." This example is towards balanced facilitating the activity because the older adults push for a different approach to the activity. The student designers tried to push back, but ultimately they decided to go with the older adults' suggestion. Throughout the study, we saw student designers take on the facilitator role by setting the direction of the activity. In session 4, teams were tasked to narrow down their design space and develop personas. A team with one student designer named Lauren and 2 older adults, Dorothy and Marie, sat at their table and worked on the How Might We statement, a design activity to help explore a design space and target user. Dorothy, the older adult, was quiet. Lauren asked, "How do you feel about that?" indicating a draft of the How Might We statement. Dorothy replied, "Well, I'm just thinking I would approach this differently, and so I'm just kind of..." Marie, the other older adult, wanted to learn more, and so Dorothy continued, "I mean, it's just probably because of my background in writing and so forth, I would probably create the person and then think about sort of what we're doing. I mean, all of this is fine, I'm just saying." Then Marie said, "Oh, let's do the person. I'd like that." Lauren started to say something, but Dorothy interrupted and said that this approach that they're doing is more incremental, more logical, and then said, "I'm random and abstract." Lauren mentioned that the order of activities could vary and that they could continue to iterate on the How Might We statement and on the persona as they went along. This is toward an unbalanced interaction because although Dorothy suggested an alternative approach, there was no negotiation between the older adult team members and student designers. In this section, I'm going to highlight what older adult participants and student designers shared about their experiences in the co-design session. At the end of the last session, we asked older adults questions about their overall experience of the study. Older adults expressed surprise and enjoyment about their participation in the co-design session. So here we have a quote from Lena, who says, "This is much more fulfilling and fun." And I asked, "How is it more fulfilling?" "Well, you're actually planning for a new technology rather than sitting around and just evaluating old technology. I think to be in the process of design, integrating into the whole idea of being involved in technology and the overall process of something or possibility of designing is really much more." Through student designers' reflections, we learned that the co-design study led students to acknowledge their assumptions about older adults. Here we have a quote from Jake, who said, "Before attending my first session with the older adults, I had this assumption going into it that I would have to do a lot of explaining, talking slowly, facilitating more, etc. However, working with these older adults was very different because older adults is a huge age range where these people will have very different capabilities." Student designers identified balancing the role of a facilitator and co-designer as a challenge throughout the sessions. Jenny talks about wanting her older adult team members to take more ownership of their work. She says, "Some things I wish I could have improved would be having my older adults present more of their work." Here we provide some considerations for designers and researchers who are collaborating with older adults. We observed power dynamics weighing more heavily toward designers to facilitate design activities. It seemed natural that student designers took the lead in facilitating the activity because of their design knowledge. However, in future co-design collaborations, we can have expectations of each person's role on the design team and communicate that the approach for the design activities can be negotiated to best meet the team's relationships and the dynamics. We suggest co-design activities that support sharing life experiences because they can support relationship building, like the timeline activity we talked about earlier. And while we worked with site coordinators and students to plan this study, getting feedback on the session's length and the number of sessions, we learned from the older adults in our study that they wanted longer and more sessions because it took them time to get into the flow of activities. Engaging older adults in study planning can help better define session parameters, support ownership in the design process, and promote balanced interactions in facilitating the activity. That's it for our study. Thank you for listening.